Well, welcome everyone to the Wealthy Speaker Podcast. I'm your host, Jane Atkinson. Now, we often have people asking us about our school, what goes on in our inner circle masterminds and in my private coaching. And I thought I'd start by pulling back the curtain and doing some client spotlights so that you can see the successes and of course some of the challenge that our clients have moving towards the businesses of their dreams. Today, I'm so happy to have back on the show Cindra Kamphoff. Welcome back, Cindra.
Thank you, Jane. It's an honor to be on with you. So thank you so much for having me.
Now, you are a mindset expert, a professor, a speaker, an author. You also have your own podcast. Tell everybody the name of your podcast.
It's called the High Performance Mindset, and we've had it for 6 years. Can you believe it? Over 400 episodes. So I feel like I've been in podcasting since the beginning.
That you were a pioneer in the podcasting, and I love it. And I know it's going gangbusters. Now, give everybody a snapshot of what your business looks like today.
So I'd say first and foremost, I'm a keynote speaker and trainer. So that's what I love that. I never expected that I would get into keynoting, but got involved in the Minnesota chapter of NSA actually to be more confident in front of the Minnesota Vikings. So kind of found speaking in that way. I'm also a coach. So I'm a mental performance coach and an executive coach. So that's kind of like the second part of my business model. And an author. So have written a best-selling book called Beyond Grit and a workbook, and just submitted my a manuscript for my next book yesterday morning, Jane.
Ooh, what's
I
that title
know.
going to be?
So it is about applying these 10 practices of high performers to business and business leadership and being an entrepreneur. And so right now, working title is Beyond Grit for Business. So
Oh,
keep
that's
the idea.
perfect.
Yeah.
That is the perfect title. I love it. And you can play off the success of the first book. And oh, congratulations. That's really, really exciting.
It takes a long time to get that going and to write and put that first and kind of eat the frog first. I'm thinking about a Brian Tracy quote, hard to do.
It really does. People say, "Oh yeah, I wrote a book," but there's a lot that goes into that. Now, I want to take you back to when we first met. I'm thinking it might have been like, I don't know, maybe 2017 or something like that. I believe you became a private coaching client first, and then we moved you into our inner circle mastermind, which it was amazing to have you in there for a few years as well. What were some of the things that you didn't know were possible when you first got started with us?
I first heard you speak at NSA, actually, at the Influence Conference. So I don't know what year that was. And I was like, I had heard about your work and I was like, I need to talk to Jane. And I think for me, the biggest difference was just leveling up my speaking. I think that I was playing pretty small before that in terms of I was speaking, but maybe wasn't asking the fee that I deserved or that that other people were. So, that was a big thing that I really learned the importance of like, okay, what actually should I be charging?
Mhm.
And, I'm a PhD of these certifications, right? And so it's kind of funny how, I wasn't charging what everyone else was. And then I think the second biggest takeaway for me was I wanted to really level up my executive coaching and my coaching for business leaders. And I had been doing a lot of work in sport, but was working on making the transition to more executive coaching because as I was speaking more, all these people were coming up to me and saying, do you coach? And I wanted to think of a way and find a plan to really streamline the business model. And I remember having conversations with you about like, well, how do I actually bring people in that are, could be coaching clients from speaking? And one of the biggest takeaways is that I started like giving cases of people that I had worked with on stage. And I didn't necessarily, say, hey, if you want me to coach you, this is how you go about it. But I gave enough examples of, this one person I worked with was struggling with this and we did this. And just that, now I would say like I'm nearly full in terms of my coaching clients. Yeah.
I love it.
And now I'm like this year we'll be launching a group coaching practice, or that moving towards that model, because it's like now it's almost it's really time consuming. So I'm trying to, I think the point is you continue to evolve and change and figure out what's going to work for you as you continue to develop your business.
Yeah, and so when we first started, you were really, really busy, like worked off your feet, but you weren't charging the fees that you deserve. And I think sometimes it takes somebody on the outside looking in, they say you can't see the label from inside the jar, to go, hey, wait a second, you should be charging a lot more, right? And so
Right.
there's that. If somebody out there isn't sure if they're charging enough, you can certainly ask people around you. If you have a coach, ask your coach. But also, you know what? Your clients will tend to tell you. I'll bet
Mm-hmm.
there were clients who said to you, oh, I can't believe how inexpensive you were back in those days, right?
Yeah, and this was an eye opener for me. It was one of the first coaching clients, and I gave him my fee. He brought it back to his HR, and the HR representative said, "Well, I'm not sure. She's not charging as much as the other coaches that we use. Is she really legit?" And that was a wake up call for me to say, "Oh my goodness," like,
Yeah, that's the danger
so.
of going in too low, is that there's a
Mhm,
perception that maybe you're not as good as you actually are. And you,
mhm.
with your PhD, university professor, you worked, how many years did you work for the Vikings on I could still picture you, teeny tiny little Cinder, standing next to these gargantuan men out on the field. You were their mindset and performance coach. How many years did you do that for?
For 4, and I still work with a lot of pro athletes now, and working now, doing some work with USA Track and Field to train their Olympians for this Olympics. So, really, really incredibly amazing things.
Mm, yeah, and therefore, look, sometimes, okay, well, let's talk about that from a mindset standpoint.
Mhm.
Why is it that people don't always know, or they undervalue how much they're worth? Why do you think that happens?
I think because we have a negativity bias. And what I mean by that is negative events get stored more quickly, they linger longer in our mind. And we do have to be really mindful of what we're thinking about ourselves, because what we think about ourselves, we become.
Hmm.
Sometimes we listen to what other people have said about us and we take on those beliefs. I think for me, as I was continuing to grow, I was just, and I'm still doing this, getting out of my comfort zone every day. And so there's a lot of fear that you can experience when you're just trying to push. And
Yes.
I grew so much, my speaking and my business grew so much in a short amount of time that I think like my brain was just trying to catch up with kind of this new self-image, um, and now I continue to try to do something every day that's just a little bit courageous. But I think our brain is here to keep us safe. It's not here to help us be a peak performer. It's not here to help us build this business of our dreams. It's here to keep us safe. And so knowing that, I think I've been really this year, Jane, like one of my goals this year is to reduce my judgment of myself.
Oh, I love that. Your inner mean girl.
Yeah, yeah, and and our judge was developed as we grew up to keep us safe. But as we get to be adults, our judge doesn't help us. In fact, it keeps on getting in our own way. I'm thinking about when I first started speaking, it was like, gosh, why am I not as good as this person or that person? Or I remember my first, you know, uh, speaker showcase. I was so nervous. And
Yeah.
instead of being really intentional and saying, I deserve here, I've had, I don't know, umpteen years of education and have more knowledge than anyone on the subject matter. I wasn't really at first intentional with building my confidence.
Right.
Now I'm more intentional with it.
Yeah, and I do think that so I've heard it. As you know, I've been
Hmm.
studying mindset for a couple of years now. This very particular thought model that Brooke Castillo, I'm becoming certified next week, actually, on Monday, a week from
Oh,
today.
congratulations.
Thank you. It was a pretty intense process. But she speaks about the difference between uh, confidence and self confidence. And let me just kind of define it for you and see how you weigh in from your own mindset perspective.
Okay.
Confidence is the series of things that you've done in your life that allows you to fall back on to say, yes, I can do this because I've done it before.
Yeah.
But in her way of talking about it, self confidence comes from within. It really has to be like a really deep seated belief that you can do anything that you put your mind to. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that sometimes people feel that confidence has to be a feeling. And they might just say, I don't really feel confident. But our confidence comes and goes. And maybe, if I could apply it to what she's saying, our self confidence comes and goes.
Right. Yes.
Can't expect to be 100% confident all the time. Even if you look at the best athletes in the world, they will describe that their confidence can be impacted. And
Hmm.
I do think, self confidence is a choice. We need to nurture it, and that's why I think daily conditioning is so important because
Like
we
your muscles. I
just
and
like our
I'll
muscles.
bet your athletes have to do daily mental conditioning all day long, right?
Oh
Visualization,
yeah.
and all of those things
Hmm.
that you do to prepare to go to the Olympics.
Especially if they're really trying to be the best they can at the highest level, sometimes the best in the world.
Right.
If they realize that it's not just the physical conditioning. And that's the same for us. The more we're pushing our limits, the more we have to really work on that mindset.
Yeah.
And so I would just say that sometimes confidence can come from action, and then we can feel more confident. Um,
Yes.
so, I think that can be helpful to know that it's a choice, it's a daily practice. There are things that you can do to improve your confidence. And I think that's so important when you're a speaker because you're like commanding the room.
Exactly. And so sometimes people will have like a little bit of a mantra that they'll say to themselves before they go on. Going on virtually and going on live on in front of a big stage are two different things, but I know that you kind of have to still bring it either way.
Mhm.
And I love factoring in I can be a little much sometimes if I really unleash the kraken. And so I have kindness and humble built into my mantra, as well as I'm going to have fun and I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You have something that you say to yourself before you get out, especially in a big high stakes, like let's go forward. You've told me so many times about doing showcases more recent where, oh, and I crushed it and I got all
I
this
know.
business. And so what were you saying to yourself before you went on those stages?
So I think, my internal judgment is the thing that can get in my way most when I'm speaking. And even if it's like this one person in the back who's checking their phone, right? And then I'm just kind of giving you some examples of things that can get in my way. When I step on the stage, and if I am just me, I'm authentic, I'm courageous, I am me unapologetically, that is when I shine. And it's been really fun, doing a lot of stuff virtually because to be honest, Jane, before the pandemic, there was no way I would have done any of that. I was like,
You were forced.
I was forced, or at least I could have maybe done it, but I wouldn't have crushed it. And I love the virtual things because it's like I'm so comfortable in my own home, you
Yeah.
know, that it's like just be me. So that's, when I feel like and I think that's when we're all at our best, when we're just our authentic, like true essence, then it gives other people more room to be their true self too. And they can see how much fun you're having and how much you're enjoying it. So that's for me, how I get in the flow. And there's been times where, like virtually, a couple months ago, I gave an hour keynote virtually, and I don't remember most of it. I mean, it was like
You were just like in the
experience.
zone.
And it's it was the kind of the event where you didn't see the people. It was just like you staring back at you. And it was like,
Yes. Haven't we all just
myself.
examined our faces far too much this year? And can you go now? I can't go without a filter anymore because of that little Zoom button touch up my appearance. I go to a live stream now and it's like, whoa, okay, give me the filter back. Um,
Oh, that's awesome.
but I'm really glad that you said that because you made another really good move right before COVID hit. Number one, you bought the house of your dreams
Yeah.
and not that long before COVID. But the thing that probably was the blessing was that you said, I'd really like to focus more on executive coaching. And so we kind of
Mhm.
helped you get that all set up so
Mhm.
that when all of your dates on your calendar went away back in March of 2020, you're like, I'm actually doing pretty good over here. Talk a little
Yeah.
bit about that and the discomfort of just having this kind of new, bigger house and how that might have felt a little bit scary in the moment.
I think it was scary in the moment, but it also, helped me, I think, step into my potential. And when I think about potential, that word just means like limitless and endless. And when we feel like we've reached our potential, we actually know, there's more within us. And I think that buying this house was also a big boost in my own confidence, that, hey, I've been working really hard, and it was like this reward for my family, just this place where we could love each other, and like be with each other and make these incredible memories. And I'm so glad we did it right before COVID.
Yes.
We were home a lot. And I'm also grateful that I did diversify my business model before COVID. Uh,
Mm.
because then when, especially last April, because April and August are my biggest speaking months.
Mhm.
And when COVID hit in March, and I mean, nearly all of my events were either canceled or the date was moved. It felt scary, and I guess I would say, and I also had a lot of confidence that I was going to be just fine because I had this group of people that that were already on the calendar, and I could actually help them through, just the difficulties we were all experiencing, and supporting them. So I'm a big believer in like diversifying your business model, because especially because you never know what's going to happen. And
And
as
maybe
speaking is
your
getting.
intuition might have guided that because your
Mhm.
timing was impeccable.
Yeah. And then I also think like now, as more things are opening up for speaking, now it's like, okay, now I gotta shift a little bit and come up with a different model to do more coaching. Just to kind of balance out that time, and kind of like what you said, sometimes I can get a little overbooked.
Yeah, and here's the thing. When you are only trading your time for money, you only have so much inventory on the calendar. And I will say my prediction is that come maybe fourth quarter 2021, but definitely first quarter 2022, things at some point are going to go gangbusters because the meetings industry is just like craving gatherings, and they'll have bigger audiences, and it is going to be there's a lot of predictions out there that it's going to come back big. But so you're going to be stretched in terms of calendar dates. But if you introduce your mastermind before that, now you're not just trading your time for money, you're going one to many. And
Yes.
that's the goal, right? The more those one
Hmm.
to many options that you can have where you're bringing in revenue. Maybe, you're doing, I meet with my mastermind, and I'm sure we'll talk about, if I can help you set yours up. We meet a couple of times a month. The amount of time it takes for you to really deliver on that promise is not a lot when it comes to the mastermind. And but at the same time, you will no longer be just trading your time for money, which I think is
Yeah.
a brilliant next move for you.
Yeah. Scaling. That's what my goal is in 2021.
Yay! I'm putting in a little a little plug for my book. It's called Scaling Your Speaking Business.
I knew it.
We'll put a link into that. Yeah, there's a lot of great ideas in the book on how to actually do that. Okay, so a couple of questions on, and I don't know if we've covered this already. What was the best marketing move you made that's gained you like another flashpoint or more traction?
I would say the best marketing decision I ever made was writing my book
First
and
book? Yeah.
my first book. And Adam Thielen, who's a wide receiver for the Minnesota Vikings, who I've worked with since he was a senior in college, wrote the foreword. So
Yes.
that was great because it was also like kind of signified the value of the mindset work that I had been doing.
Yeah.
But that really was a game changer. 3 years ago, it just really, blew up my speaking. And I think anybody who doesn't have a book should go write one.
Yeah, because it not only will it be a level up in terms of, I just got a new client who read my book, and that one client was like, okay, well, the whole book was worth it. Now I know, because they read it and thought, oh, I need to be doing all these things. And that's what your clients are going to do. They're going to say, we need Cindra. So, it also allows you to get all of your ideas and processes down on paper, and it helps
Right.
you solidify those ideas. And so this, playing off the first book to the second book, brilliant. I think that's going to go so well for you.
And the thing I think that's great is like this morning I was talking to somebody who is consider bringing me in June, and hey, could I send you a book?
Yes.
Right. And, and so I think it also is a great business card. It
Yes.
it gave me the opportunity to take a step back and say, what am I about? What is my curriculum? What's my process?
Yeah.
And that's what I speak on is these 10 practices in my book, not all of them.
Mm.
And, some people will say, when you speak on two of them, that's great, Cindra, because then we can bring you in for a few other times for the other 8, right?
Okay, so I have an idea for you. You could actually break it down into smaller virtual and live sessions. So maybe you do like a live kickoff at the beginning, a live kickoff at the end. You could do 10 virtual sessions covering a chapter of the book each time. And now you're not just doing, one time trade time for money, you're doing a package that really helps become more transformational for them. You're moving from transaction to transformation, which is pretty cool too, right?
Yeah, I love it. I've done some things like that during the pandemic, this last year, where it was more, we did 2 at a time, but it was great for businesses because then they could keep on working on their mindset. It wasn't like just this one and done kind of thing.
Yeah, we know. I mean, you've studied this a lot longer than I have, but I know I will never be done with this work. And I love that
Yeah.
you've shared, you're a PhD, a mindset expert, and you still have a struggle. You're still doing the work every single day to make sure that you keep your mindset peak.
I think you have to. And, especially for me, I'm really trying to push, my limits and see what's possible. And I think when you're really trying to be courageous every day, that's the fear and the gremlin and the inner critic that can get in your way. So, maybe if you're just, fine doing what you're doing right now and you don't have another level that you're seeking, but I think especially if you're trying to really push your own limits, you need to train that mind every day.
We have a saying inside scaling your speaking business: if you're not willing to fail, you're not ready to scale. and talk
Mhm.
about what your biggest, most costly mistake might have been in your own business.
Well, Jane, I think that's a great point. I've been really thinking a lot about like how I define failure and that I can define it on my terms. And so on my podcast, I ask people, you know, most experts, I say, what's your definition of failure? What does failure mean to you? And it's
Mm,
really cool. Like there's all these different definitions of what failure is,
yes.
but I like this definition of a guy named Michael Gervais. And he works for the Seattle Seahawks. He's a sports psychologist. And he said, failure is any time I'm not being authentic.
Oh, interesting. That's
And
interesting.
oh no, in
Yeah.
my goal, right? When I speak on the stage, really my goal every minute of my life is like to be me. Because
Mhm.
that's how I connect. That's how you connect with each other, right? That's how we connect with each other, is just being me, being us.
Right.
And so it depends on how we define mistake or failure.
So what was something that cost you some money that you're like, oh, darn, that wasn't something that really worked out the way that I would have liked to?
I think the times that I feel like I fail are the times where I'm not being authentic. When, for example, like that speaker showcase, when I really wasn't myself, and
Right.
that's, I feel like a failure. I think there's been times where I have not asked for my fee or the fee that I know that I deserve, and then maybe somebody else was booked for the same event, right? And then that their fee was higher.
Uh,
Times that are failure
That
for
is a
me.
punch in the gut when you accepted much lower than you should have, and then you see beside you on the same stage someone who you know charged way more. I'm working with one of my clients right now. We're doing like some deep dive mindset work and have created way different bottom lines for her. So I understand sometimes you need to pay the mortgage, right? I get that.
Right?
And so, but what we talked about was that when she reduced her fee too dramatically, not only did it do her brand a disservice, it also did her brain a disservice.
Mm,
She would go into that particular event not being true to herself, not being
right.
authentic, and knowing the value. Maybe are you going to show up and give the best value possible when they've reduced your fee by 80%? I don't know. I would be amazed if somebody could really do that all the way down to their heart.
Right. Right. Yeah. Right. So that is that for sure. I think all those reasons are why you need to ask for what you're worth.
Mm.
Yeah. And so, when I think about are there any other mistakes that I've made? I think the way that I've really approached mistakes are okay, how can I learn? How can I grow? Right.
For
That's
sure.
how the best, they see it as like a mistake, right? So have I started things that
Okay.
didn't go so well? Yes. But it's like adapt and adjust, adapt and adjust. That's what my whole motto has been this year. Adapt and adjust. I'm resourceful and I will figure it out.
Yes, exactly. And
Mm,
I look at failure exactly the same way. And in the mind, the thought that I've been running through my mind is because I'm not at my financial goal for this year. COVID was a setback for me as well. Um, but I just keep thinking to myself, it's only a matter of time. It's only a matter
yeah,
of time. I don't really look
great.
at things as failures. I just draw out the time toward to the success. It's
Yeah,
just going to take me a little bit longer. That's
that's
okay.
okay. And Jane, like goal setting science might say, that goals are really about checking off these boxes. But the way I've kind of at least adapted goals in my business is that they're really more about what I can become than what I check off. So my same like you, my goals are really high. And, you know, if I don't get there this end of this year, well, I will just start over next year. And it's like if I set a goal high, then think of all I can become this year,
Yeah.
you know, set it
Who
higher. So,
who do I need to become to reach that goal? And if that's what happens is you start to really, so you talked about scaling your speaking business. And for one of the things that I talk about in the book is that you really need to become a leader of your business. You need to first take it seriously as a business, put systems and processes and team in place, but also then you need to lead that. And so even if you don't reach your goal, if you became a better leader to your team in the process, then job
Mhm.
well done, right? I love that question.
Absolutely.
Who do I need to become to achieve this particular goal? That's a good one.
I need to become more consistently, authentically me.
I like that.
Practice
And I
every
like that
day.
you come back to authenticity. I think that's a strong
Mhm.
message here. How beneficial do you think it is to have a coach by your side when working towards the business of your dreams?
I think it's a necessity, Jane. I have my own mindset coach. I've had her probably for 8 years,
Yeah.
and she's helped me push my business. Obviously, I've worked with you, which I've loved, and will continue to work with you. And so I just think we can get in our own way. And I'm saying this as a coach, and somebody who's objective, somebody who is a thought partner, somebody who really believes in your best interests and is going to push you along, but also hold you accountable and say, Cindra, last time you said this, like, you know,
Yeah. Are
I
you
think,
sure you really
are
want
you
to go down
sure?
that rabbit hole? Yeah.
Yeah. And I think our spouses and our family and our friends, the difference between a coach and them is there's a clear outcome where there might be that just they're like, giving you some advice, sometimes even when you don't want it,
Yeah.
right? Coach really is there to help you find what's within you. And I will, as long as I live, keep on working with a coach. Because I can believe it's so important to keep growing and keep being courageous. And I think if you have people by your side to do that, it's a game changer.
Brilliant. And one of the things I think happens a lot in my world is that I believe in people more than they believe in themselves when they show up. Actually, football player Orlando Bowen, who you've met before
Yes.
at my live events, he was a Canadian Football League player. And I saw far more potential for him than he even saw for himself. And so it's interesting for that element for people not to really even know. And I would say for you too, Cindra, I saw really huge greatness for you. And it's just a matter of plugging you into, hey, wait a second, this is what's possible. This is the fee that's possible. This is how much people will value me. I don't think you put any credence in PhD. And I was like, wait a second here. Hello? You don't need to prove anything to anybody. You've already done it. So you did an amazing job. Well, I have absolutely loved having you back on the show. I feel like this was a very different conversation than our first one, but we'll put a link to that as well, just to see how time has changed and evolved with you. Thank you so much for coming back with us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Jane. I'm grateful and thank you so much for all the work and all the positive impact that you've made on my business and my life. So grateful for you. And
Thank you.
when listening, you got to keep listening and hire Jane.
Uh-huh. Thank you. Tell everybody where they should get in touch with you and maybe say the name of your podcast again.
My podcast is called The High Performance Mindset. 400 and so episodes. I'd love for you to check it out. And you can find about my speaking or coaching over at Dr. Cindra, so DrCindra.com.
Beautiful. Well, everybody, I feel like this was one of those episodes that, maybe you feel some sort of internal shift. Who do I need to become? What can I do every day to shore up my mindset, to really get my confidence as high as it possibly can be, and to show up my most authentic self? Because when you show up your most authentic self, great things happen. And we're going to say thank you so much to everybody listening in at home. Leave us a review if you've enjoyed this episode. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss anything out into the future. And we'll see you soon, Wealthy Speakers. Bye for now.